Hello everyone. Yes, I am the US Developer Advocate for Logs.io, which, as some of you may know, is a company that focuses on the ELK stack. We provide hosted ELK services with security and other super secret sauce built on top. And if anyone would like to talk about that further, please ask me. But to get right into what we're here to talk about, or what I'm here to talk about, I'm here to talk about diversity in the tech communities to help us build stronger, more diverse communities as we move along. So hopping right in, we ask ourselves why we hire people, right? Because usually when we're hiring people, or when our employers are hiring people, we have job recs. And those are pretty straightforward, right? And people self-select themselves out or in when they read our job recommendation. So when we're listing positions and we're looking at them, we might not be considering in the forefront of our minds the stuff that we're actually looking at beyond the technical requirements. And these are important because it's part of our perception of what's going on. So for example, when we bring someone in and they've, made past the phone interview and come right in and we're talking to them, we're not just saying, okay, do you know Ruby or do you know AWS? We're saying, can you communicate efficiently, do you work well with others? And there are all these other skills, but they're kind of more in the back of our mind. We don't actually necessarily list them. We just almost expect them to be there. And then we start trying to filter them out. And these are important to be aware of and acknowledge, because if we're not aware of what we're actually filtering for, we actually might be filtering people out of positions from some of our unconscious biases beyond just the obvious of, oh, does this person communicate well? We might be judging some people more harshly than others. And this is why I talk about serendipity a lot, because serendipity is some of the stuff that we actually can't quantify easily that we might be looking at. And the example I usually give for the serendipity case is I actually came across a Medium article written about 2015. And it's really well written, and I have it in my resources slide at the end if you want to take a picture of it so you can read it yourself. But essentially there's a developer who worked on the Medium platform, and a ticket was submitted as a bug report. And this person said, I cannot write a diacritic S on my keyboard. It just doesn't appear. That's not happening. And you have all these developers working on this platform, and they start thinking the things that might be normal, right? They have their own assumptions as to what could be going wrong. They say, well, we don't handle language parsing. People are just typing in a text area, so why would this character be wrong? But there was one Polish developer in the group, and he knew exactly what was wrong because he lived it, and he describes it very well. And to summarize what he says, we actually write the diacritic S by using Control S, which is protected so that people don't save HTML files to their desktop when they're trying to save their blog post. And he immediately knew that this was the problem, and he was able to fix it like that. And that's the kind of serendipity that we look for without realizing we're looking for. And that's what diversity brings. It's this thing that we don't know what's going to help us. They didn't hire him because he was Polish. They didn't hire him to fix in 30 seconds a ticket exposed to a character set that the rest of them were unfamiliar with. But because they did have a diverse group, they happened to have someone handy that figured it out very, very quickly. And that is the power that diversity brings to a group. Unfortunately, right now, diversity is rather fragile, to be honest, right? We have to do a lot of effort because when you're hiring, you're looking at people, there's a certain unconscious bias in all of us. We're like, okay, I trust people who are kind of like me, who have similar likes that I have or behave similarly to that I do, that my brain easily understands. And so when you have an incumbent institution, as you do, that strongly favors a certain group, that unconscious bias continues to flow out unless you kind of forcefully start to adjust the process. So how do we adjust the process? What do we do? We take into account our life experiences and the experiences of others. So going back to, Polish guy, he's just one example. Like, I work out of Buffalo, but I landed a job at an Israeli tech company that is very diverse, but it's also a very interesting experience because we are both similar and dissimilar from each other in a variety of ways. And this is going to hold true for a lot of people in a tech hub city where you're working with people who may not speak your language, who may not communicate the same way you do, even if you do speak the same language. There might be disabilities, either auditorily or verbally or visually, that actually cause us to be very different. And the reason this is important to acknowledge, and with emphasis, Your mindset on a matter is very, very important, right? And what do I mean by that? If I'm working, let's say, with a mentee, which I do back in Buffalo, New York, if someone comes up to me and asks me a question, I perceive them as a problem, as a disruption in my workflow, then I will treat them like I'm frustrated already just because they're asking me a question. If I treat them as someone who's coming to me for help, my shift in mindset will automatically help me treat them with greater compassion and maybe help me come up with solutions that are more helpful to them instead of brushing them off so that I can get back to whatever I was prioritizing before they came to me. So one of the things I think is very important is to start to outline different ways that we can shift our mindset when people are interacting with us, because there are lots of talks about diversity that do focus on some of, to put it mildly, the grosser aspects of things that can go wrong when things go wrong. And I think most people are on the same page with all of that, but then we have all the subtle things that happen. Maybe we aren't on the same page, or maybe we aren't aware, and when we're not thinking about them, we can't fix them, and if we don't see them, we also can't fix them. Subtle differences like coaching instead of rescuing, and sometimes people don't realize that they're rescuing when they kind of are. And as an example, when I first started working in my first SRE role, I was working at a company where we did a lot of paths development, and I noticed that one of the other employees that was hired around the same time I was, so he was roughly at my same stage of development, when he was asking questions, most of the answers were framed in the following way, where the mentor would say, here, look this up and show me what you do. And if I would ask a question, it was, let me show you and show me how you replicate it. And if you think about how that scales out over time, there's nothing malicious happening here. The mentor is not sitting there thinking, you're a girl. But because of how we've been socialized to handle you're a girl, you're a boy, etc., his automated response was to show me how to do something so I could copy him. And when you scale that out, and as it so happens, when I work at the organization that I do back in Buffalo, New York, it does scale out, you get two very different types of engineer. A lot of female engineers start to become very reactive, and a lot of male engineers start to become more innovative as a result, just because of how they were taught and trained during these formative apprenticeship type internships that we all go through. So again, like the coaching, not rescuing, you don't think that you're swooping in and lifting someone off their feet, but if you're showing them how to do it and not letting them show you that they can do it, that is a form of rescue, and it's subtle. Another one is a perception problem, where sometimes people talk about, oh, I'm giving a handout. When we talk about, and this can vary from, city to city, country to country, but sometimes there are initiatives done to help forcibly induce diversity into environments. And sometimes that means things like you have to have a certain percentage of women, or persons of color, or people that are gender diverse, or et cetera, et cetera. And so sometimes what can happen outside of these groups, perception of, well, you're only here because quota. You do not have value, you're here because quota. And they might not say it to you, and you might not actively necessarily think it yourself, but again, because of subtle shifts in mindset, you might answer someone as if you feel they don't belong with you somehow, even if you're not quantifying exactly how. They feel different from everybody else around you. And the shift here is that you're not handing things out to people, you're compensating for something that's very different, for a chasm in different experiences and opportunities. So for example, we have young women that I mentor and other people mentor in the Buffalo area. And one of the things that we do is we help make sure that they can meet the appropriate people and actually get access to opportunities. We're not doing the work for them. Sometimes we're not even technically training them, although sometimes we also are. It depends case to case, we do both. But the point is, they wouldn't know from where they were raised or from their own social and professional networks. They don't know who to reach out to. And so as a result, they have to work harder to find people, to give them the technical skills, to give them the opportunities that other people, hey, my dad works here, right? And it's much easier for that person to find opportunities than some other people. So you're helping people get pulled up. There's also being respectful of people's different learning styles. How many people have been told to read the manual at least once? Yeah. So it's interesting because there's definitely a perception where if someone took the time, or a group of someone's took the time to write documentation, clearly it has value. It might not. Also, the person you're speaking with might not speak the language that the documentation is written in and might have a really hard time reading that. I can't even read your construction signs. I do not know what I would do if I was expected to read a manual in Hebrew. Going further from that, there are people with learning disabilities. Maybe they're a great graphic designer and they might also be dyslexic. And reading is just very difficult for them no matter what language it's in. And they're asking you because from their perspective, you actually have the knowledge that they lack. And who knows, maybe you'll be able to do some value adds that the manual doesn't have. You're like, okay, well, steps, 1, 2, 3 say to do this, but I actually know that you really shouldn't do it that way. It's easier if you compile and do these other things. And you know that from your experience. And now you're sharing that with them and helping them actually grow in your organization or in your community. Another thing that I do and that we do in Buffalo with our organization with Inclusive Tech is something called reciprocal mentorship. So the idea behind this is that the person that you're bringing in, no matter how young or old they were not born yesterday. Like, you have something that they want, and they have something you want. And as a very specific example, one of the organizers that I brought into the group, she was 21 at the time, and she needed technical skills, right? She's graduating from university, and she has very intro-level skills. She wants to professionally network, and she wants to start working in the community. That was her need set. What we needed as a nonprofit is someone that could please task manage, because organizing a volunteer organization is really rough, because everyone has day jobs or other commitments. And if there's no one keeping tabs as a sort of task manager on everybody, things can fall apart very quickly. This girl was organized like I have never seen. I wish I was this organized. So she brought something to us, right? She brought something very valuable to us. She was able to make sure that all the tasks were getting queued up, were being completed in a timely fashion, and that communication was not going stagnant. Meanwhile, we were teaching her things like JavaScript and Ruby. Providing challenges is also something that we harp on a lot. So if you think back to the beginning of your respective careers, how many people were told the best thing you can do to learn a thing is make a project out of it? How many of you felt limited by your own ignorance? Right. Building a project, it only goes so far, right? You can build your own project maybe as your first project ever. Maybe you decide you want to learn COBOL for whatever reason. I mean, I majored in physics. We were Fortran, even in the 2000s, but once you get past that initial, I know what to look up, this is what my brain thinks to do, you run out of your own knowledge. In fact, you might not even know what you're not finding when you're doing your Google searches and all the things that people tell you to look up on your own, unless someone in the community with greater experience and expertise than you says to you, hey, why don't you build a product building a chatbot? But don't build it with something obvious. Build it in Ajax. What? Because then you get to bend to breaking this new stack or this new technology to you, and they can say, hey, why don't you try building it this way instead of this way? Why don't you learn this design pattern? Why don't you learn this framework? And you would never have thought to look up those terms on your own, or if you did, it would have been at a much, much slower pace. For, if we're being honest, not really a good reason, right? There's no reason to not accelerate you to a point where you can benefit the community and go to work. And it's very, very important for mentors to help their mentees in this fashion. There's also a bit of resilience versus acceptance. So this is maybe less subtle than some of the other ones, but the idea is once diversity becomes more normalized, it will be self-sustaining on its own, because diversity will be the background noise instead of the new thing. We won't have to protect it, we won't have to guard it, we won't have to do things like quotas. At the same time, since that is our life right now, if we're not aware of it and we're not acknowledging it, then we're kind of in passive acceptance mode. And so that might be things like, oh, someone didn't hear what she said in the meeting room. This happens all the time. I'm going to look at anyone in the audience who's said something in a meeting or brought up an idea and had no one hear you. No one's never done this. At least one of you. Some of you are smiling. So I'm going to take that as like shy yeses. But if no one echoes you or does anything to strengthen your voice or your position, well, maybe you're not able to for a variety of reasons. Maybe you're new, maybe you're still in an internship and you don't want to interrupt, or whatever's going on. So having someone else to step in and be like, that was actually a great idea, did everybody just hear that? That can actually be very helpful, and that goes right into more proactive resilience, right? Because then you're protecting these new people that are coming into your company and becoming part of your space, and you're making space for them. How many people have been told to fake it till they make it? Now you're all laughing, right? So this advice tends to work better for people who are already confident. If you already happen to be confident, you're not really faking it, or at least you're not faking the confidence. But when you're telling someone who's maybe not experiencing confidence because they don't have knowledge, telling them to fake their confidence, it's not standing on any pillars, right? You need to actually build the expertise, the knowledge, the experience, because once you have knowledge and experience, the confidence most of the time will follow. You speak at your first event, and in a case like someone like me, and you're really nervous and you don't know what to do, and they're like, hey, come 5 minutes early for AV checks, and you're like, oh, no, okay, I hope nothing goes wrong, or whatever. But then when you're doing it your 50th time, you're just standing there while they're just hooking you up to whatever they do, and it's like nothing's happening. And that's where the confidence comes in. You trust that they know what they're doing, and they trust that you know what you're doing. And that's just by virtue of practice. But you can't easily just tell someone to be confident, just like you can't onboard people socially. And by that what I mean is, how many people have joined a company and maybe they didn't have a ton of documentation or startup processes, and they were just kind of like, hey, talk to so-and-so if you have a question, peace out. Right? So
it still works like that here anyway.
It still works like that many places in many ways. It's definitely very common. I think I've encountered it at over half the jobs I've ever had. And I've been working in the industry for about 13 years now. And it's definitely very common. And the problem with it is, let's say you're trying to focus on diversity and bring in more people. Okay, so you just brought in a young mother, and you guys are all maybe young, in your early 20s, and you socialize at bars, but mom has to go home and take care of her kids. And that is the danger of social onboarding right there. You're physically creating space and distance that cannot exist, right? Because that's where you have conversations. Or if most people smoke and some people don't, and they're staying inside having snacks, you're not actually teaching people things. If you have an explicit onboarding process, this is the person, this is the process, this is the documentation, then you have something for people to follow. And then if the social norms within the company don't necessarily yet fit with the new person that's being onboarded, they're not left in the dust wondering what simple things are, like, how do I ping my API and do a health check? Is anyone here? And that is actually super helpful for people to make sure that your company will actually be able to get the diversity that they're hoping to have and retain it. Job titles. How many people pay attention to their job titles? Ish. Okay. How many people have been told job titles don't matter? How many people have researched this? Right. So within certain disciplines, since you raised your hand, we're going to pick on you. Have you noticed a discrepancy in pay grade for the same job role with a different title?
Oh, yes. I've noticed how you just add DevOps to something, but then it doesn't add the 20%.
And for those who maybe didn't hear, yes, the title matters. If you add DevOps, it adds a higher percentage.
Like
it's more like that.
Senior and junior, and we do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
We were all being told that like they make a mistake. Maybe like that we didn't have
Oh, I promise. We do that in the United States too. I guarantee it. I run up against it every single time. I get, I was working with a QA engineer recently who told me that she was making $20,000 less than what the average was for the area, and I happen to know that information. But she was telling me things like, well, this is my job title, and that's the average. And I'm like, yes, but the average for the profession and not the title is much higher than what you have. And that was a very depressing conversation internally for me, because it was not the first of this type. It was not the last. So if you're looking at increasing diversity, let's say I'm new, and instead of being in the industry for however many years I've been, I'm like, I do have coding skills. Maybe I'll be an SRE. I don't know that the title is SRE. Maybe I think it's cloud engineer. Maybe I think it's infrastructure and automation specialist, right? And so I'm looking through and I'm like, okay, well, I know what AWS is. So I'm gonna look up titles with AWS in it. Do you think I will have a good time? It's not going to be a good time. The landscape is very diverse even in titles, and I might not know who to focus on or what to focus on, and I might find out something like we just covered where I'm making far less than I could be just because I didn't ask them to call me a DevOps engineer. And isn't that awful? So job titles definitely matter. And if you're in a position where you're mentoring either a new hire or even out in your communities, you have someone who's coming and has an overlapping specialty with you, and you know that, and you know, for example, that adding DevOps to a title makes a difference, you tell them what to look for and make sure to include it in their search term so they don't get lost in the woods. This is not a technical term, I kind of half made it up, but I'm pretty sure it's somewhat self-explanatory. This is the professional networking part of everything. So when you graduate from uni, if you're not in a position where you actually know people or you're relocating to a new city or anything like that, how easy is it to find a job when you don't know who to know? It's not a good time, right? So
I don't know, today with LinkedIn and everything, it might not be that bad.
have you ever tried to cold submit resumes en masse? Especially with no work history. So you're graduating from university as an unknown quantity. Right. So you're graduating from uni, your work history is, but I did that project, and that unpaid internship, and that was lovely. Yeah?
When I graduated, it was tough.
Yeah.
But, that's how it is. It's supposed to be tough.
Why? Why is it supposed to be tough?
Because people know absolutely nothing about your skills.
But isn't there a way to make that easier and then they know your skills?
By doing projects and then show them what they have.
Right. So you can make it easy. It doesn't have to be tough. It's tough by design because knowing people is hard, especially with technology, which creates this weird situation, which you actually called right out. But LinkedIn, but Twitter, etc. Why don't you know people? You don't actually have to know people. You can find these people. How many of you people answer, and I can say I don't, by the way, answer a LinkedIn message, hey, I'm looking for a job, or hey, I'm looking to fill a position? Right? So you get them all the time, the recruiter emails and the non-recruiter emails.
Not the recruiters. Not the recruiters. The seekers. Absolutely not.
Okay, how many people answer recruiters?
I always politely say,
Fair enough.
Email.
Okay, and how many people answer job seekers? Okay, half. That's half. So if I'm a newbie and I'm sending out a spam to all of you, and more because I don't know how to self-select yet, I've just put in like Ruby in LinkedIn to see what pops up. I'm picking on Ruby today, sorry. And see who pops up, and then I send out maybe 100 LinkedIn messages to people I don't know, who don't know me, that I've just graduated and I would like a job at a Ruby shop. Maybe half or less will answer me. And that is a huge signal to noise problem, where I'm not getting a lot of results, and I'm not going to be able to customize my resume either, because one of the pieces of advice that people give you, customize your resume for the position. But if I have no experience, and I'm spamming everyone a resume, I am not going to make or have feasibly the time to make 100 resumes with customized statements and cover letters and things that would actually make it stand out. Meanwhile, people on the receiving end of my spam are getting spammed by other people because type is cool. So I don't stand out, nobody else stands out, and it's just a sea of resume. And this is why knowing who to know is actually really important. One of the things that we do with the mentorship group that I have in Buffalo is we actually extend our professional network. So those of us who are in the position of mentorship, we actually bring people to events with us. And what I tell my mentees is it's your job to learn and it's my job to be your champion. I'm going to tell you who to talk to, and I'm just going to send you in their direction and do the introduction, and then it's your job. And I'm going to make sure that that door exists and you know where it is. Because it doesn't have to be hard. You might have GitHub projects, but no one's looking for your GitHub repo specifically. But if you walk up to them at a meetup such as this, suddenly they have a reason to pay attention to you. Maybe they think you're interesting, and it hurts a little bit less. Getting your first job will always hurt because you don't have experience in your own job. But we can make us all suffer less. Which gets us to the meetups. Meetups are super important because if you think about it, without meetups, there's no organic way for the inexperienced to meet the experienced. There's no path where that would cross. You have an academia, which is pretty much a trade school for more academia, right? In college, you learn how to do research, and that's handy. And then you graduate and go to the private sector, and it's less handy. And then you don't know who to meet, and you don't have any way to actually talk to them. Like if I were not visiting as a speaker, and if I did not work at Labs.io, we would not have an avenue to meet each other or say hello. You all are super interesting, or at least the ones I've spoken to are thus far. To help people with that, if you set up meetups like this, coffee ops, lean coffee are some of the ones that are going on in the States. I'm not sure how far out they've gone, but the principle's the same. We're basically creating an invitation for a dialogue so that people actually have a chance to meet and take advantage of all the other things on all the other slides that we just talked about. This is the resource slide. If you want to take a picture of a slide, this is your slide.
And I'm going to share the slide.
Oh, they're on GitHub. But some people like to take pictures, so I leave it up for a minute. Of particular interest, by the way, is this TEDx Beacon Street. So that's in Boston, for anyone unfamiliar. And it's actually very interesting because it talks about how women in particular, there's an experience gap, where you get women who don't go from lower to middle to upper management. And it's because of a gap in expertise that they cover more thoroughly than I can now about the type of mentorship that they're getting. And when you talk about what managers need, the answer is business acumen. And when we talk about what we're training people to learn, it's technical skills. So it's about 15-ish minutes if memory serves, and I highly recommend taking a look at it. And that is the talk. Does anyone have any questions? All right, one. Oh, yes, one.
So, besides all of this, what would you say? I have a friend have a startup, and I think they are already 15 male engineers and 0 female engineers, and they keep pointing it out for the long time. And they feel stuck. So besides that, all of that, we have another advice or things like that, how to implement those.
So the question is, she has a friend with a startup or knows of a startup that has 15 male employees, and that is the startup. And I actually do have advice for this because one of the companies in my work history, Stark and Lane, I was employee number 7 and lady employee number 1. Right. And the way that went out is I actually had connected with a mentor who brought me into the company as an internship. But other ways that can happen, it depends on what you're focusing on a little bit. And you have room to flex. There's no one path to success. So for example, if they find themselves strapped in a way where they don't have the headcount currently to mentor, then they wouldn't be looking to bring someone on who interns. But they could definitely go to like Ladies Who Tech Meetup and start to find other groups or other minority groups and actually target their tech meetups and reach out and offer, say that they have openings and be very open about that and see if they can attract interest from these communities local to them.
I think that in addition, another side of this problem was once you already have a quite large team, you don't necessarily, as somebody who doesn't fit in with specific targets, you don't necessarily want to it's a fight. It's others to join a very large group. So
the other part of that is that's a struggle to dehomogenize a group, and the answer is that is always going to be true. The first few employees will have that struggle, but depending on how much they try to meet them part way, it will be less of a struggle with every turn. And what I mean is if they're trying to be mindful, and yes, they're not going to be able to be mindful of everyone because they don't currently have any diversity to help them be diverse. So it's going to be a struggle for everyone. But if they don't take the steps early when the company's small, they're going to go from a 15-man group to a 100-man group. It's not going to go uphill from 15. So my thought on the matter is the sooner they start, the better. If they start taking action in their own space, to create room for people who are different from them to do things to their space, to subtly signal and to subtly help other minority groups to enter their company, I think it would be successful for them. Understanding and being compassionate that they might make mistakes and that the person might not always feel the urge to do the emotional labor of, why did you do that? Because it will happen. But longer term, once they start to get one or two and they make it a priority to do so, that pain will be less. There is no easy, painless answer, just like there's no painless answer to shifting careers or learning your first career. There will be some. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer where there's like, oh, unicorns and rainbows. This is the path where no one experiences any hardship, because that's not what we're living in right now. But it can be less.
But there's another problem. There's a natural one. It's like a supply and demand problem. There aren't as many, not nearly as many, for example, female developers as male developers. If you go to any one of the universities in Israel,
Why do you think that is?
Look,
I
we can trace back
don't-
all the way, right?
We can.
We can trace back, and that is like, it's a classic chicken and egg problem, right? But to some extent,
In India, it's not the case, but it's a very difficult question. In
It is,
India,
it
they are 50-50. But
In Israel as well, like if you look at
What?
this year's, if you
in
look at
computer science,
this year's, for example, Jerusalem computer science graduates.
really?
The graduates are going
When I
to
graduated,
wow.
Usually it's
one girl.
30%.
I'm
and
totally
then-
in shock.
All right, one at a time so that you can all hear each other.
Started out 50-50, and we ended up 70-30. But,
So interesting to that, the talk that I referenced, the TEDx Beacon talk, talks about women dropping off with experience and things that are being done that
well,
actually
they all
create that
shifted to
environment.
biology chemistry.
You mean the sciences that are stereotypically associated with other women? And I'm not calling you out to be mean, it's very true, but that's the perception stuff. When you're a woman and you don't feel like fighting uphill all the time, you look and you're like, oh, if I major in this, there are already women there. And then that's why I say diversity is fragile and not self-sustaining. If you're in biology, it's self-sustaining because they've created a heterogeneous group. I can go over there and expect to see other women. That's why it's not an easy answer. The same is true in the US, by the way. I mean, you said India, you said, in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and things like that.
In general, in Israel, there are a lot less women.
That's true in the US as well. And the graduates are reaching parity, but they're also dropping off quickly. And one of the things that I filter for in Buffalo is I actually just keep a running list in my head and I socialize to see what companies are a good fit for a new female developer. Because if you're just trying to learn how to code, you don't also want to learn how to socially navigate people who don't know how to treat you. And it's something that we can chuckle at a little bit, but it's kind of self-deprecating chuckle, right? Because you're like, I don't actually want to, I've had to have all kinds of conversations that I'd be more than happy to chuckle about now that were really stressful at the time. But that's what happens when you're, and the one job I had where I was employee number 7 was not the only job where I was the only female on the team. That actually historically has been more true than not, right? So it's always, men make jokes sometimes, and I'm just like, could you not? Not that one, maybe not that one. But they don't think about it because suddenly they've introduced a female into their group, but if it was just them, maybe no one would catch it or care. And that's just gonna be true until things start to become more self-sustaining. But that goes to the point too, why are women changing majors? Why are women going into other careers once they have a major? They're going into the environments that are welcoming because they don't feel like doing the emotional labor. It's exhausting. It is. So until we reach out to each other and make space for each other, that's not going to improve. Any other questions, comments? Yes.
So there's the whole theory or, where they say culture is kind of like a mirror of yourself, right? And until that, like you said, until that picture changes, that's oftentimes what really happens, right? So many times women engineers, they need to be hired based on potential or things of that nature because they don't have the work experience because many times they're filtered out for reasons that are seen as culture or something of that nature. So my question is really about that. Like you said about mindset, changing your mindset, but it's not so simple when you're sitting in front of someone.
It's not simple on either side. It is a bit. So the question is, culture being a mirror of the self and knowing what the incumbent situation looks like. how do you adjust that image? And the answer is it's rough, right? So I've worked with young women who have actually tried to gender anonymize their resume, or in the case of some women of like Muslim history that try to, ethnically or religiously erase themselves so that they don't get filtered out from HR, from auto processing. My answer to that is, since I'm advocating for you, how about you not do that? Because you in this situation, we're creating a space where you don't need to. If they want to filter you out, let them filter themselves out of your space for you, because you don't need your first job to be uphill because of your background or your ethnic makeup or your religious history or anything like that, if you can avoid it. But some people have to make those decisions as well. You graduate from university, you need a job, you have an apartment, you need to pay to live and eat. And sometimes you take a job where, now that you're a disadvantaged minority, people might not be treating you well, and it just grinds you out. And in order to change that really involves all these open discussions and having these question and answers and basically teaching people how to make space, because it helps to talk about things like imposter syndrome, and it helps to keep things in the open about when what are called in the US, I don't know if the term's used over here, microaggressions, or other things that are, making it more difficult for non-men to exist in the tech space. But again, men can't choose to be welcoming to women if we're just sitting here not saying anything to them either. So we definitely need to just keep talking and just say what we need. And if people aren't meeting our needs, we need to walk away. We need to advocate for ourselves and vote with our feet. Not an easy answer, I know. Any other questions? All right, well, Claudia, thank you for all of your time.
Thank you so much, Quinn. It was fantastic. So how to hack a community from the bottom up? When I do this talk, Starbase do this talk, and I should start from somewhere in the middle. So I started taking like a step back and actually starting from the beginning, because I just made this assumption that everybody knows what community means, what's involved with being a meaningful participant in the community. So I'm going to start from the beginning. Might be things that you know, but just so we're all on the same page. And then I'm going to explain how you can meaningfully participate in community, lead communities. Okay, so community, this is the CAN definition from Webster's dictionary. But I think it's more important always to start with the why, right? So I think when we talk about community, the most important thing that community does is bring islands of dispersed knowledge together. And this is important for many things. To not have to reinvent the wheel around a lot of the things that many people know but don't know collectively, right? So if it's for information exchange or problem solving or innovation even, creating new ideas and sharing work and a lot of things that help us innovate and drive technology forward. So I think community is actually the backbone of driving good technology, right? So when I talk about community in this context, I'm talking in the context of community of technology, but this is true for any community, right, that you want to build. And I guess I'll need to introduce myself, right? I just did that. All right. So I'm going to just touch quickly on a little bit of the marketing fluff, we'll call it, because this is the stuff that, because you have to prove the value of community, right? It has to be business driven. It's not something that you're doing just to do community. You want it to actually have value for the business. If historically, the marketing funnel was something like this, where after first touch, it was handed off to sales. Today, there's a much deeper understanding that that people have to have a really, really good experience in order for there to be any viable business prospect, right? And this is kind of where community comes into the story. Community actually maps to the most important part of the marketing funnel. It's the selection through experience, the evaluation. People have to have a really, really great experience in order to want to even have any kind of business conversation with you. And eventually, when we're building products, when we're building technology, we're not building it in a vacuum, right? We want people to actually use our technology. We want people to be excited about our technology. And this is a whole process. And this, and when you empower each one of your users individually and embrace them, you enable them to have a really great experience with your product. And this is like kind of a rinse and repeat process, right? Because if they're a happy user, this will translate to success for your product, and then they'll also be advocates and champions, and they'll bring in more users, right? So this is like a whole pie funnel thing that keeps feeding itself if you're doing community right. And so what I like to call the manifesto of community, but it's really built on some known pillars, and they're basically built one upon the other, right? So we talk about common purpose, right? People want to be focusing on similar problems, find people for joint, kind of conversations. You're rallying people around a certain cause, right? So it's really driven by what we call the law of 2 feet. She mentioned the law of 2 feet. Law of 2 feet in itself is the benchmark for whether you're delivering value in your community. If this common purpose is being realized, right? If people want to come and be a part of your community, if they want to collaborate with you, if they want to contribute to your community, this common purpose is driven by intrinsic motivation, right? People want to feel this purpose, this mastery in a certain area, and this is what brings them to rally around a certain cause. And many times there's this kind of misconception that only technologists can be part of a community, but that's not true. There are roles for everyone in the community. There are many different personas. There's the creators, the crowd, the contributors. There's many people that can be part of the community, and they all have equal value. I think the primary thing that's critical to having a really a community that fosters the innovation that we're looking for is open exchange, right? That's the backbone of good community, because if people don't feel that they're capable of voicing their opinions, of taking a meaningful part in their community, then this collaboration won't actually happen, right? So it's really important for feedback loops, and when people feel like they're able to learn and provide, from their knowledge, contribute knowledge, and get back knowledge, right? This open exchange is what eventually, drives the next pillar, which is meritocracy, right? Your place in the community is earned; it's not given, right? And when we talk about meritocracy, it's about taking a meaningful role, and this is built on open exchange, right? If the community fosters open exchange, and you're able to contribute your knowledge, and this is, I think, the benchmark of meaningful and the benchmark of meritocracy is eventually what you contribute to the community, right? So there are more ways to get involved in the community than just contributing code, right? I like to say, in order to have a meaningful way to participate in the community, you need to chop wood and carry water, right? Chop wood, carry water means that a community doesn't drive itself. Participation doesn't only have to be contributing code. Like John Bacon likes to say something that I really get attached to, which is while it needs to be really, really easy, developer advocate, a good developer advocate, a good developer relations person needs to ruthlessly remove obstacles to participate meaningfully in the community, right? That's what their main role needs to be. And the mean time to participating meaningfully needs to actually be very, very short. So if you are a developer, the mean time to hello world, or the mean time to pull request needs to be really, really simple to be able to do these things, right? But there are also other ways to contribute meaningfully in the community without necessarily having to be an engineer. If it's, contribute to documentation or foster communities, bring these islands of knowledge together, be the people that are actually the connectors, and enable everyone to have a meaningful role in the community. This is something that's really, really important. There are very many ways to participate in the community. And eventually, community is an all-in thing, right? It's not one day a year. It doesn't necessarily always have to be face-to-face. You can have many different ways to communicate. But eventually, if people really feel that they have the right channels to communicate, to collaborate, to share knowledge, to collaborate on certain projects and solve problems, this is what will sustain your community in the long term. So in terms of benefits of community, right, there's benefits as an individual and there's benefits as an organization, right? When we're talking about individuals in a community, there's the short term and then there's the long term. So as an individual in the community, many times we choose to participate in communities for our own professional development. But in the short term, it's really kind of just understanding where you're benchmarking yourself versus the rest of the community or versus, people in the industry. You want to understand where am I and what are these skills or what do I need to bridge in order to get to the place where I feel that I have the expertise that I need to take my next step in my career, to jump to the next phase, or even do the things that I want to do most. Like I said, intrinsic motivators, so you want to feel like you're doing the things that you like most, that you're mastering the things that you enjoy the most. And many times the community gives us access to knowledge that we didn't have before. We have individual parts of the puzzle, but kind of brings it all together. And you say, okay, well, I didn't know I could learn that part of the technology, and that really interests me. That's what I want to do. So that short term actually helps you understand where you are, kind of gives you a sense of belonging with people that like the same things and kind of opens your eyes to new things, and also helps you meet important people in the industry who can help you eventually in your next career growth, right? But in the long term, I like to call this going deep, right? So if that's like kind of getting a scope of like what community can offer you, long term offers you like the benefits of going deep, right? You can actually expand and enrich your skill set very, very deeply. You can stay on top of trends, understand where the industry is moving, and you can really improve your employability by, professional networking as a skill, right? You meet the right people, and eventually, in the long term, this helps you solidify your professional identity. And you too can become an influencer eventually if you gain the knowledge that you're looking for, if you go deep, if you garner the expertise that you're looking for, if you fill that kind of puzzle of different pieces that you're looking for. Eventually, you can contribute in another way to the community, and you can be the person that's sharing knowledge. And so it's just like constant cycle of things that happens in order to drive innovation, right? But then we look at organizations, right? And many organizations are also looking to foster communities. And one of the main questions whenever, an organization or a business takes on an initiative is, okay, what's in it for us? What's in it from a business perspective? So first and foremost, innovation is driven bottom up, right? These days, it's, for the most part, many business innovations and technology innovations, they're grassroots. Many times it's not dictated top down. Those are people that are way too far from the technology many times. And so being in community helps, kind of see where you are vis-a-vis the industry as well, and be ahead of like technology trends, right? So if you know that, okay, this is where technology is moving, this is where the industry is moving, but this is the skill set I have in-house, it helps you understand where you need to innovate, where you need to focus on, the skill sets you need to bring in-house, and also kind of scope out different types of personas that you have in your area, if you have to expand to other regions because there aren't the right skill sets in your area. So it gives you that perspective as well, and also more perspective on common problems. So in the short term, I can give you an example from my previous employer. Our product was written, and this is something Anta knows, our product was written in Java and Groovy. And we're very active in the DevOps Days community, and there's a part of the DevOps Days community that what's called the Unconference. And as part of the Unconference, we decided to have a session on, okay, what kind of platform would you like to use in this specific context? And we got really, really good feedback on, yeah, this is not a tool I would use. We don't like this holistic platform kind of a thing. When we integrate with technologies, open source technologies, we're usually using other languages, other formats. And this instigated a complete rewrite of our technology. So this is also like kind of a long-term benefit. We decided to go all in. We benchmarked ourselves versus the industry. We understood the technologies we wanted to natively integrate with. And we did a complete rewrite to Python and YAML. So we technically, in the long term, evolved our organizational capabilities. We onboarded many more clients because of this, because we were able to integrate more deeply with the ecosystem. So this is something that, like, long-term alliances and partnerships, we wouldn't have been able to do that had we not gotten that community perspective and the understanding of the people that would actually use our product and brought it back into the product. So those feedback loops are really, really important. And then you can also take advantage of like market opportunities if you're ahead of the trend, right? So if you're innovating and you're understanding, you're like kind of the intelligence of the masses, communities, it's kind of like a microcosm of the industry community, right? And you bring that all in back to your product. You can take advantage, you can take advantage of emerging markets. And of course, It's always good for employment and finding early talent as well. Sometimes you get these juniors and graduates and people with a lot of potential coming to community events, and you can be an early onboarder of these people that are like a diamond in the rough, who are smart enough to come out and put themselves out there in these communities, and you take early advantage of that as well. That's from an organizational perspective. And just because you can't have a DevRel meetup without developers, I love this one. Wait, this is... So developers, what I like to call the new blue ocean, right? If historically things were dictated top down, like I said, things are being driven bottom up, and developers are the new decision makers. So being involved and getting their perspectives is going to be an early kind of game changer for your product and your business, as I see it. So the how, right? So it's easy to say, okay, do community, right? Oh, just do community. It's an easy thing to do. But it's not, right? So like I said, there's a lot that's involved. Driving community over, the long term, maintaining developer mindshare over an extended period of time is never an easy thing, right? But if you want to get started, so first and foremost, you gotta find the gaps, right? There's a lot of communities out there. There's a lot going on, but if you think that there's a specific technology or a specific subject, like for example, the DevRel community that we recently kickstarted, right? We saw that there was becoming a growth in this kind of these roles in Israel. We felt that there was a gap with bringing these people together. We're starting small. It's never start big with community, right? You got to bring people in. Again, be value driven. The value will prove itself, and people will feel that they want to take part in this community. But yeah, you have to find the gaps. You have to see what it is that you want to bring together, the type of knowledge you want to exchange, and you have to chop wood and carry water. You have to put in the effort. Again, define the audience pretty clearly. You need to know who you're focusing on. You have to know what to focus on, and again, what not to focus on, right? Because if you do try to do it all, there's a saying in Hebrew, tefasta lo tefasta, right? So if you try to do too much, again, it's also not it's not a good fit. You have to be able to make sure that you're doing the right things for the right people, right? So another thing that I like to say in terms of defining audiences, if you're planning on doing things that are like, beginner, intermediate, and advanced, be really clear about that as well, right? So also make sure that people know from an inclusive perspective, so that they feel welcome, so they feel that the community is the place that they're free to be open and exchange their ideas, and that it fosters this openness. Make sure that they know that this is a beginner event, and feel free to speak up and ask the questions that you have. But this is a more advanced event, and this is the pace that we're going to be going at. So we want to make sure that everyone's aligned in terms of the depth of knowledge. You can give them like the prereqs of what they need to know before they come to this event or whatever it is. But make sure that you define that really well. Harness roles in the community. And this is something that's like a cycle that changes, right? I like to split people into the creators, the connectors, and the crowd, right? These are the three kind of roles that I see them, but I don't think that people are solely one role, right? So you have the people that are all able to share from their ideas and are able to, contribute immediately. So those are the people I call creators. There are people that are able to bring people into the community. They know who should be here, where there are other islands of knowledge that need to be brought in, knowledge that needs to be shared. And then there are the people that want to learn, the crowd, right? These are the people that, by the law of 2 feet, let you know, benchmark you on whether your community is actually bringing value to this said role. And these people, they change, right? So many times people in the crowd, once they reach a certain level of knowledge, they become creators as well. Once they start meeting people and they move out and they go to the pastor, they can bring people in. They're connectors. So learn who these people are, learn the different personas, learn how they want to take advantage of the community, and make room for everyone in your community. Be as inclusive as possible. Key messages, I kind of touched on that before, but I'll go to size matters. So I think there is something to be said about large organizations within your community. I think reach really matters. People that have reach, whether you want to build, a community of a certain size, you can always find ways to get the people that you want to bring into your community or knowledge you want to bring into your community. So leverage those as your assets within your community if you know somebody, for example, like the keynote from tomorrow, Sharone from GitHub, I really want to bring that freedom into Israel. Leverage the people in your community to help you make the connections you want to bring into your, to bring the knowledge into your community and continue delivering new and perspectives. Coding your marketing, for me, this really means that use the right tools, know the things that your developers are using. Not all, obviously marketing doesn't work well with developers. Provide useful tools and ways for them to engage with your community. If this is like, different API integrations or whatever it is that you're using, find the ways to bring your people in through the technology assets that you have. That's what a good product sells itself, and that's I think it's a critical piece when you want to provide an excellent developer experience. You definitely have to find the ways that developers want to engage with your product. I think one thing that needs to be really, really clear when you're setting out to build a community, or at least one that's business driven, there needs to be cross-organizational buy-in, because a developer relations role, a developer advocate role, it crosses so many functions within the organization, whether it's R&D and product and support. You want to build a really, really good experience for a product, especially for the technology people. And there are so many aspects that this touches on. And unless this is a strategic role, unless this is something that really is backed by management and has executive buy-in, it will be very, very difficult to do this well. KPIs. Okay. So obviously with any type of role, KPIs are your benchmark for success. And it's a double-edged sword, of course. Without KPIs, you can't prove success or failure. It's never a good thing to not have KPIs. So you need to be cognizant of the things that you're looking to measure. But you have to also be realistic about those metrics, right? So even the largest of like tech communities, the benchmark for success is not necessarily the amount of followers you have on Twitter or the size of the community in terms of numbers, but there are many other ways to measure success of a community that aren't necessarily in hard numbers. There are more soft ways to measure success. So if it's an increased adoption of product usage, those are things that you can measure. If it's like the amount of downloads or API integration, or the different things that people are using, different tools that you're using around your product, certainly. But there's also something to be said about increased brand equity and awareness, what people are feeling about your product, the sentiment that you're driving around your product. This is something that's very important. Increased engagement, right? If you see more of an uptake in questions on Stack Overflow, or interaction on your forums, or things that the places where you interact with your people, you can find ways to bring them in, and sometimes upsell, sometimes make the first seller, or make the experience really, really good for the person that's looking, that's prospecting around your product. In terms of the things that you produce in order to make it a good experience, you can always quantify in terms of, the volume of content, the interaction, the discussions, the contributions of code, if that's relevant. These are all things that quantify how engaged people are with your product, and whether you're on an upward trajectory of adoption and interaction. Active members and users, so you want to be on continual growth. You want to see long-term engagement and mindshare. You want to see people becoming champions. All of these things are the realistic KPIs that you can measure when you want to measure community, if you're doing a good job. But it's very hard to draw a direct line from what you're doing in the community to direct business or direct ROI, unless things that you see as quantifiable business metrics are things like SDK downloads, integrations, all of these things. If this is a business metric, then that's definitely something that can be quantifiable. So I like to debunk some myths around community, right? So tech communities are only for technologists. I'm the #1 person to say I like to ask what is defined as a technologist, right? Is somebody who writes code the only thing that can be defined as a technologist, right? I'm a highly technical person. I don't write code. But tech communities are for everyone. Everyone has something to learn. You have to be very inclusive when it comes to community in order for people to feel welcome, be empathetic, welcoming, friendly, and patient. That's the Apache Software Foundation's motto, and that's what I really believe in. Some people want to learn, some people want to contribute, and everybody should be welcome. You should be very cognizant of your code of conduct. You should be sure to enforce your code of conduct if people aren't behaving in an empathetic, welcoming, friendly, and patient way. Make sure that people know how to behave towards the people in the community, and that everyone brings value. Yep. Not everyone was born knowing the rules. Some people learn the rules as they go, and let's make sure that we are very civil about the way we communicate these things. So when I say business doesn't mix with community, like I said, hard marketing, hard sales is not the idea behind community, obviously, but community itself is a good place, like to benchmark yourself versus the industry and get the business insights that we're talking about. So from a business perspective, community should be bringing you business value if you're doing it right? So like the ability to innovate and solve problems and ideate and all of these things. This is business value. On another side of this is also that it's a win-win situation, right? So running a community is an expensive thing. It's an expensive operation. It's not something that comes easy. There are ways to do it more frugally than others. But if there are people, if there are organizations that see the value in contributing meaningfully and contributing and backing the community, is always a good thing. It's a win-win situation, but you also have to understand that your position in the community can never be bought, right? It's always earned. This is only just a way to support the community. You can find ways, to highlight your brand for, employability and things like that. There are ways to do it well, but it's not a complete no, right? You can build a community with limited resources. Like I said, there are things you can do frugally. There are the low-cost things like meetups and grassroots events and blog posts and podcasts and a lot of things you can do with 10 fingers. So don't be afraid if you say, okay, I don't have a budget for community. You can do a lot of things. You can rally a lot of people. You can build a lot of value without having deep pockets. So don't be afraid to approach community if you think that right now you don't have an out-of-pocket budget. Find the community at X. That's another thing, like find our community on Facebook or find our community on whatever. And community is an all-encompassing thing. There isn't just one place that is community, right? So there has to be face-to-face interaction. There has to be an ongoing thread over an extended period of time for people to be able to participate meaningfully. But it's never okay. Go here and find the community, right? And that same goes for a person in your organization. Oh, that's our community guy. Okay, if you have a community guy and that's the person doing community, you're not doing community right? Because everybody, like I said, community, everyone needs to believe in it. It needs to be strategic. It needs to be cross-organizational. Everybody needs to be a part of this in order for it to thrive. There are so many islands of knowledge in your organization alone. And community that's the value of community, right? Bringing all of that together, all that knowledge together. Knowledge is power. So don't say that's our community guy, right? Make sure that if somebody wants to get involved or collaborate, that everybody is of the orientation to build this together, because the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That's what I like to say. Eventually, when we bring it all together, it's much more valuable. So definitely get involved. There are plenty of communities in Israel, whether it's DevRel or DevOps or Lavelsim. You are an untapped island of knowledge, and you have a wealth of wisdom that you can share with the community that you don't even appreciate yet. There are definitely people in the community that like to mentor people and bring them in and help them get to the place where they feel comfortable participating meaningfully. So definitely take advantage of these. There are plenty of really good communities in Israel. And that's me. Thank you. Questions, anyone? Yes.
Yeah, I have one. How do you see the difference between community members and just audience? Like a member versus audience?
So like we were talking about, the law of 2 feet is a really critical thing, right? There's the butterflies and the bees, that's what they call them in DevOps. They're the people that come and they flutter in and they listen and then they leave, but they also are a benchmark for you for whether you're actually delivering value. If people want to come and participate and be a crowd, there's something there, right? It's something interesting enough. There are those that might be the bees and will cross-pollinate and will ideate and will create more things happening in the community and will be a driver for additional kind of interaction. But then there are some people that just like to come and listen, the butterflies, learn something, take it back, and then maybe the next time they come, they'll be able to, bring themselves to be a bee and cross-pollinate and do more. But there's nothing wrong with just coming and attending and learning. This is a benchmark for whether there's enough interest even in this topic. And sometimes those people convert to other roles as well in the community. They start small. They start by being the fly on the wall, but there's definitely room for everyone in the community, even if they're just coming to listen.
On a similar topic, how do you create a pipeline? How do you create a pipeline for people who want to transition from the member in the audience to become more in the active participants or take more leadership roles? You create avenues for those leadership opportunities.
Certainly. So in the same vein as meritocracy, right? If there's a need for what it is you want to deliver, then the pipeline will eventually, will create itself, right? So everyone comes to the community, they have something that they want to offer. There should be that really easy path to allowing people to get involved, open exchange, meritocracy, like you said. People should feel comfortable suggesting how they want to contribute, and if this is delivering enough value for enough people, obviously they'll take a leadership role, meritocracy, right? If their code is the most valuable code, and then they'll be,
And you make the invitation well.
Yes, it's largely about being open to and receptive to everyone's role in the community. People have to feel comfortable challenging ideas. People have to feel comfortable bringing new thoughts in. People have to feel comfortable creating their first pull request or opening their first issue or making their first comment and saying, I don't think this is the right way the technology should be going. I suggest this be the direction. If enough people say, you know what, I like that. That's a good idea. Do a pull request, we'll review it. You know what I mean? Like that's just the way it needs to be. Everyone needs to feel comfortable enough to voice their opinion. And even when there are difficult things to hear, keep the conversation civil. But definitely, yes, open, welcoming, patient, and friendly. That's it. Thank you.
Yep.